another edition of Demonology today. Hello, Mr. Carroll. How are you doing?
All right, Mr. Chris, how's it going?
Doing good. Good evening, everybody. Tammy Johnson, Aussie Sue, Stanny Stones, Crazy Witch, Juno, Irene, Catherine, Test H. Everybody. I hope everybody had a good weekend. And B-Man. Welcome, everybody.
The bad thing about weekends, they never last long enough.
That's right. And Mystical Keeper comes into the rear. How you doing? Welcome. So how you doing there? So interesting last show we had. We ended on a note talking about giants. I just sent you that 52-inch footprint.
And I've been waiting to say this. Tonight's going to be a big show, okay, about giants.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let you up front. I'm having problems with the internet. I live out in the country, so they are working on it. So if we go in and out, that is my apologies. But I sent Mr. Carroll a 52-inch footprint from the last show from a guy out west. A wife was at home, lives in the mountains, was in the middle of the day, and she looked out her window, and she saw something taller than her trees. And she couldn't see what it was because the sun was behind it. And the only thing she could see was a shadow. And she freaked out and called her husband. Her husband was like, whatever. And she's like, literally like stroking out. So her husband come home and could not fathom what he saw out in the yard and called his Bigfoot buddy to come over. And he was like, dude, what? And so they had one track where they can actually cast. And ladies and gentlemen, they casted this track, and I forgot how many people it actually took to get this track out of the ground. But literally, Mr. Carroll, did it not take up the tailgate of the bed of the truck?
More than it was hanging over the tailgate, actually.
So, but the tracks just disappeared. So the first thing I said to the gentleman on the show, and Val and Decker, that was a Nephilim. That's what it reminded me of. And one of the guys was like, didn't remember the movie The Troll.
Well,
so hello, Yolanda, Standing Stone.
Here's the interesting thing about the Nephilim. They have a supernatural attribute to them. And here's one other thing. The tracks that supernatural creatures leave usually disappear after a certain amount of time. So that's a strong connection of what you're talking about there. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can't believe they got it.
Yeah, the tracks do disappear. Suppose I had that happen to me once. As a matter of fact, I talked about that night on another podcast I did before I came on here, where these line of tracks I went back to look at them and they were gone. They just weren't there anymore. I mean, and there was no wind that day. There was no rain. There was nobody who would have erased them. They were just gone. And I wasn't gone that long that I came back to look for them. It was only like maybe half an hour or something, and they weren't there. So I found out later during research that often supernatural creatures will do that. Their tracks will slowly go away, just like they do sometimes.
Interesting. But how do you want to start tonight? I know this is, you said, your favorite subject.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to start with a Bible quote, actually. 2 Bible quotes. Let me get them going here. Hold on just a second. Get them up here. Just one. I'm going to read you 2 Bible quotes, and this is what it says.
Stingray says your audio is wonky again, Dennis. It's cutting in and out again.
Okay, how's that? Is that better? That a little better?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. All right. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. That's Genesis 6:4. And then you have Numbers 13:33. Listen to this, it's very interesting. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and were in our own sight, we were in their sight as grasshoppers. Think about that. That's very interesting. Uh, when you compare yourself as a grasshopper to something else, that's very big, folks. But what they're talking about here are the Nephilim. That's what they are called, the Nephilim. Now, I want you to listen to that first passage very closely. And there were giants in the earth in those days and after. So there was what the Bible is saying here, basically, and it's one of the oldest books we know. Okay, it's saying that once upon a time on this planet there existed a race of giants alongside of regular men. To me, that's very interesting. And there have been over the years scientific research and excavations that have come upon these bones, the giant skulls, bones, and rib cages of men or women, as the case may be, that were humongous. These were, I mean, probably in the neighborhood of what you were talking about earlier. The mountain trolls, the very famous mountain trolls. That's what that sounds like. That, you were referring to with that case. Were
Your
sometimes
mic's still
20.
breaking up pretty bad. It's clicking in and out again. Is
Okay,
your Bluetooth kicking in and off?
Let me see. I can adjust it a little bit there. And see if that helps any on that. Is that working? Is that better?
Let's try it again.
Test. Huh? Is that doing
your
better?
Bluetooth kicking in? It's still clicking again. It's like
I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna turn this off. It may be interfering with it. See if that'll help any. Okay.
All right, we'll try that.
All right. Anyway, the mountain trolls were described as 20 to 30 foot tall. That's very interesting. That's very big. Think about it. You're getting way up there in the clouds almost. And down through folklore, we've had many stories about giants over the years. The very famous one of Jack and the Beanstalk. Well, actually, the first original title for that story was Jack the Giant Killer. Well, she did finally do that giant in. You were thought to be a very big hero if you could do in giants, definitely. And what are all giants described as being? They have some certain attributes that they share with each other. Most of them are said to be red-haired. They have red hair. Some of them are mostly described as cannibals. They eat people. And they're kind of wild. They usually live in caves or out away from men because men fear them. And they're sort of like a dragon. You go out to kill dragons and giants, that kind of a thing. You had to go out in the woods to do it, or way out in away from civilization. So they consider to have a lot of the same attributes between each other. And you have the story of the Indians in the Southwest who fought a race of red-haired giants. And these giants here's the interesting thing about it, they would steal mostly women and young children, and they would eat these people, okay? They would take them back to the cave systems and eat them. So the American Indians had enough of this junk, so they piled up a lot of brush in front of the caves, set it on fire, and asphyxiated these giants, supposedly. And there have been stories told that through the years, some of these bones have been found, giant arm bones, leg bones, and stuff like that. along with skulls, but it was covered up by the Smithsonian and certain other scientific institutions because it did not fit their criteria. It would probably threaten their money grants too, by the way. That's probably why a lot of that went down that way. But here's the interesting thing about that. They took them to the museums and conveniently lost them. That's the way that story went. But here's the interesting thing, Chris. Giants have been with us from day one, in the beginning of all of our history, as far back as recorded history goes, and then in the folklore and legend as well. Giants have always been with us, and I find that very interesting because you find the giants at the very beginning of the Bible. Just in a few verses into it, you hear this about the giants. You know, so I feel like it's a very recognized thing that these giants did exist. But here's the interesting question we're going to talk about tonight. Are they still with us? Just like this lady you talked about. Are these things still with us? Are they still out there walking around amongst us? And here's another thing we're going to examine. How did this happen? How did this come about? What the heck are these giants doing here? Or what were they doing too also in the past? So what's your kind of spin on that, Chris? How do you feel about giants? Do you think that they are some still out there, like the famous Kandahar giant? You know the story about the Kandahar giant.
Well, I believe that they still exist. I think the lady saw something in her yard. The guy casted a print. I think the guy on YouTube actually filmed one. I think that they took him out. I think his comment that he faked it, I think it was coerced. I think his redaction was coerced, and that he mysteriously disappeared, and his family don't know where he's at. I mean, that speaks words of wisdom right there. I mean, that casts a lot of shadow and a lot of questions. That video just did not come out of nowhere. Now I know there's a lot of CGI out there and AIG and whatever now, but there was other witnesses around when that video was released and published. He was not the only one on that highway at that time.
Right.
So there are also rumors that the government is working with Nephilim and underground bases to working with against God and other powers to be. So I don't know. So yeah, is it feasible and possible? Absolutely.
According to the story, the government wanted the DNA of the giants, the Nephilim, for certain experiments that they wanted to do. You know how the government did stuff like that. They had their own swing on weaponizing this type of a thing. But let's go back a little bit, far back, past modern times. Let's go back to the biblical times. Who were the Nephilim? What were they up to, and exactly why we get giants out of this thing? Okay. The Nephilim were the offspring of fallen angels and human women. That's what the Bible plainly said there. The sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they had children. The Satan's plan from the very beginning, Chris, was that I'm gonna get to down to Kandahar here in a few minutes. The satanic plan for this world and mankind was to screw it up as much as possible. Here was God's creation. It was perfect in every way. You had the Garden of Eden, everything was going along fine until you know who showed up in the form of a serpent and screwed everything up royally. He's good at that. That's his job. But he had a much bigger plan than just messing with Adam and Eve. He wanted to destroy Adam and Eve's offspring. And in order to do that, he had to corrupt them. And I'm going to talk about big time. Now, remember, the first crime was Cain and Abel. Abel killed his brother, and Cain was cast out. A lot of people ask me this question. Cain went forth and went out in the land, and he went to another city of people. Hold on a minute. Where did those people come from? Okay? I believe in the background, all of this time that all this stuff was going on, Satan had messed with the seed of mankind and corrupted mankind to the point where these people were corrupt and basically wholly somewhat evil um, in their outlook and everything. Remember, God had to destroy the world the first time with a flood because of this. The blood of the Nephilim, the blood of the fallen angels, had corrupted this world, and that's where you get the Nephilim from. Okay, that's the human and demonic connection together, the hybrid, you might call it. Now, here's the interesting thing, and a lot of people don't talk about this or think about it. But look at the Bible. The very first part of the Bible is a genealogy book. You ever ask yourself why? It's not just showing you the lineage of Jesus all the way back to Adam, by the way. That's the genealogy, okay? But take that word genealogy a minute. What it comes from? Our genes, our DNA, okay? They're showing you Jesus' DNA, his genealogy, all the way back to Adam. Why is that very important? Because the rest of mankind got corrupted by the satanic plan. But the Jewish people were not. And that is why God was so prevalent about asking them to remain pure. Do not get with the Gentile peoples. Do not get with the mixed races. Stay pure. Keep yourself what? Genetically clean. Because I've got to use you in a correct way to defeat the offspring of the Nephilim in that respect. Now, a lot of people have asked me, how did the Nephilim survive the Great Flood? But that's the number one way they would have done that, through the DNA. And to this day, still people are born, Chris, with 6 fingers sometimes, double rows of teeth that the giants are supposed to have. Some people are born with that gigantism, as it's called. It's a known disease, by the way. Where is that coming from? Why is that showing up? Somewhere back in human history, this got bred into us for a purpose, my friend. That's what it was all about. This was a plan, a satanic plan, to screw up the offspring, the sons of God, which is what we are considered, because we are God's premier creation. We not be the only one in the whole universe, okay? But we are considered his children. And what is the ultimate goal of the satanic plan in the end? Not only to screw up mankind, but to throw God off of his throne. That's what it's all coming down to. Satan not only hates us, he hates one thing more than he hates us. And what is that, Chris? God. He hates God more than he hates us. A whole lot more. Although he hates us pretty good too, though. He went out spared for that. But he hates God and he wants to become God. He wants to take God off of his throne. He said that in his own words. I will make you, God, my footstool. That's pretty bad. But that's what the whole plan's about. And a lot of it has to do to this very day with the DNA thing. The blood is the life, as the Bible says. The blood is the life. Why is that blood connection so prevalent and so much? Why were the giants after blood so much? Why were they cannibals and they eat people? That was the number one reason why man rebelled and tried to destroy the giants, because the giants were eating us. We were food to them. They were much bigger than we were, of course, but we were easy prey. We were easier prey than a bear or a lion, You can get a man a whole lot and eat him quicker. The favorite way for a giant to eat people, by the way, they took the head off first, and then they would eat the rest of it. That way you quit wiggling so much. But anyway, that's the way the giants were, and that's why they were so hated by mankind. There was a big animosity between them. But look, there you go back to the Bible again. Listen to this very closely. This is what God said to Satan. His seed, the seed of man, will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel. There's a hatred, an animosity there, and it's still ongoing. But the satanic plan is also still ongoing and will go on until the end of this age, the end of the age, the end of the world, as people call it. And by the way, that doesn't mean the end of this planet. Planet Earth is not going to blow up to cinders and go away. The world is going to always remain. But the world they're talking about is the civilization, the social system of mankind will come to an end one day. And a newer, better system will take its place. A real, true heaven on earth. But until then, we have to deal with the progenitors of this satanic plan. And the plan is still ongoing, and the giants play a big part in this plan, which is very interesting to look at. Now, I'll talk about a minute about the Kandahar giant, and I'm going to run over that right quick. Where supposedly this detachment of soldiers, I think it was in Iraq, wasn't it? Or I think somewhere like that.
Yes.
Anyway, they were sent. Some type of activity was going on, and they were sent to this cave system, and they were confronted by this giant. And they said this guy was estimated at probably around 12 to 15 feet tall. Now stop. Now to be able to get that in your mind, let me tell you what the average height of a telephone pole is. The average height of a telephone pole is 20 foot. Okay? So you're looking at something 15 foot that could reach up and touch the top of the telephone pole. No problem. Okay? That gives you an idea of how big this thing was supposed to be. Well, this thing had red hair. This thing had red hair, long red hair. I'll tell you another thing about the red hair. It's always been associated with the devil. Sorry about that, redhead people. That's the way it goes in folklore. Red hair has always been associated with bad things. Why, I don't know, but they just pick on redheaded people. But anyway, you get witches, vampires, and all that stuff. But anyway, he had long red hair. He had fur on, had fur skins on him. His spear was very long. I told her how long his spear was, like 8 or 9 foot long spear. And he killed one of the soldiers with his spear. Well, they shot at him, but he just went through all this. This detachment was, I think, about like 12 men, somewhere in there. And he went through all of them, killed most of them, supposedly, or several of them. And they had to call for reinforcements. Reinforcements came in with a bigger unit, and they actually were able to shoot this giant to death. And he was placed on a pallet and taken in, I might have been a Chinook helicopter, a big helicopter, it's one of the transport helicopters, taken back to a base, and they were all debriefed. And it was, the bodies were explained as having run into an IED, and they were an explosion because they were so badly mangled that they were actually killed by explosives, supposedly. That was the cover-up story. And of course, when you are in the military, you do sign a contract that says that you will not divulge anything that happens. And they say, you signed this contract. If you say anything about what happened here today, you will go to prison for the rest of your life, or probably die, or both. So they hushed these soldiers up. Now, a few of them supposedly later on talked about it. And that's why you hear about the giant of Kandahar. And the interesting thing is that where this happened is not very far, I don't think, from supposed to be where Mesopotamia was. And this, of course, is supposed to be in the general area of the Garden of Eden and a lot of these other biblical areas. And it would definitely be the location for the sons of Anak, too, by the way. Here's the interesting thing. A lot of this may be connected with Nimrod in the Bible, too, by the way. You've heard of Nimrod. And Nimrod was not that good of a guy either. He founded his own city and all that. Nimrod was supposed to have been, I think, the son of Cain. Then was another one called Jubal Cain. So it was all in the family. But the human genes were corrupted. And that's where you get the Nephilim. Now, the spirit of the Nephilim is still in this world, too. And I'm going to tell you what that is about, okay? the spirit of the Nephilim, of these giants, are still all about blood. Okay. Look at the many bloodletting rituals that ancient man did, the Aztecs, the Egyptians, a lot of these other guys that did all this human sacrificing. What is it about this blood thing going on? Well, that's part of the satanic plan too, the blood and the adrenochrome or whatever name you want to give some of the properties of this blood that they're fashioned to. Giants love blood. You know, giants are often described as eating people and drinking cups of their blood. So it all comes back, blood, over and over again. And they would make blood covenants. You know, God made blood covenants with some people. That was a very strong promise if you make a blood covenant. Anyway, blood was a big thing in all this, and especially when it comes to the giants and the Nephilim. The spirit of the Nephilim is really the true spirit of what you would call the Antichrist. They're both one and the same, although we give them different tags because they're coming from different directions, but they're still the same force. You understand? They're still the same makeup. They're still cooperating with each other and all that. But the interesting thing about the Nephilim part of this equation is it has that human equation to it. The Nephilim have that human factor, and it's not all just demonic. You understand? It's half and half, sort of the hybrid thing. Now, a lot of people have speculated. Yeah, Og was another one. His bed was supposed to be like 12 foot long. The bed that he slept in had to be a special made bed of iron. He was so big. Anyway, the whole thing about it is the demonic has that influence, but it is a hybrid thing. And there's speculation that some of the high cryptids today, like Dogman, Sasquatch, and all that, actually come from this Nephilim influence, this Nephilim corruption in the world of nature. Okay, because here's the interesting thing, Chris. Not only supposedly did these fallen angels breed with human women, but they also bred with animals. Think about that a minute. You even see that showing up in the gods of ancient Egypt. Look at most of their gods were half what? Human and half what? Animal.
Animal.
Yeah. So the Nephilim were part also of nature, not just mankind, you understand, but elementals of nature to that extent. So some people to this day speculate that creatures like Dogman, Sasquatch, Yeti, all these other different things in different parts of the world are the offspring or the remnants of nature's and the Nephilim as well. Because they still have a little bit, if you look at it that way, a human factor to it. You know, the form of the human being, but yet they're not human. Yeah. That's the Nephilim. And that's what the giants look like. And I believe that if you run into these giants, very much like we were talking about earlier about the mountain troll, let's think what he's described to look like, okay? Mountain trolls have long hair, teeth, big hands. They're huge. And like I said, they can be between 20 and 35 foot tall, supposedly. That is big, my friend. That's a walking mountain. Okay? That's big. Anyway, they have this long hair, red eyes, and some of them described as having small horns. Okay? What are we looking at here? You're looking at a human hybrid type thing of an animal. Sounds like a big giant Bigfoot, doesn't it? So you've got that factor going on, but yet it still has remnants of man in it. So what you're looking at, the satanic plan, was not only to disrupt and corrupt mankind, but nature as well. It was to screw up God's whole creation. And that's what it's still, and the plan is still ongoing to this day. And I find that to be insidiously evil. But here's another factor, folks. The spirit of the Nephilim is still there. That's the demonic connection to it. But yet you have remnants of mankind itself that is cooperating and complicit with these forces, like the giant of Kandahar. They wanted the DNA. They would love to weaponize a giant. Think about it. If you could put a giant on the battlefield that's 30 foot tall, my gosh, you'd have an unstoppable weapon. It would be hard to do with something like that. So they're looking at things like that, definitely. I know this sounds weird, way out and wacko, but the government doesn't think that. The powers that be don't think that because they are in cooperation and complicit with the spirit and forces of the Nephilim that still are in this world. Because the Nephilim is a vital part of the satanic plan. It will always be an ongoing thing until the end of the world. We're stuck with the Nephilim. And the Nephilim's in our genes, though. It's part of us, unfortunately. If we're not Jewish, if we're not strictly Jewish and never been corrupted by an outside bloodline, we're that. Spiritually, though, that's a different story, okay? The Nephilim spirit is in this world, and it still corrupts men. Look what we talked about before. Look at all these mad serial killers that end up being what, Chris? Cannibals. They still like to eat people. They do the things that should never be done, that are taboo to the rest of civilization. That's the Nephilim. They have that hatred for mankind. And like I said earlier, that's what the whole plan's about. It's dividing us up, turning us against each other, fostering our hatred we have for each other. And this makes that Nephilim spirit stronger. This negativity we put out, it feeds off of it. We are feeding the beast. And the beast is getting stronger. And he's getting more powerful. And he's getting ready to take us over and make us what we truly are going to be in his eyes. Cattle. That's what we are. Cattle.
What do you think about O negative blood?
I've heard a lot of things about that. There's other negative type blood that I've heard about too. That fall in line with the O negative thing. I have B positive plus myself. I'm positive. Okay. Anyway, that's a blood joke. Okay, folks. But anyway, O negative is very strange. I think it's very rare, but it's also very strange. And the RH factor blood too is very strange. Some people say it's almost like it's an alien type blood type. So you've got some interesting things. Like I said, the blood tells a story, I think. And here's another thing we got to think about. Science is not being truthful with us, okay? Science is not telling us the whole story. Are you surprised by that statement, by the way, Chris?
No, absolutely not. I'm not.
I don't. Science is not telling us the whole story when it comes to DNA because there are factors in our DNA that they can't explain or don't want to explain or don't want to see the obvious explanation. They're covering this junk up. It's been a cover-up for a long time. When you talk about giants, you got to talk about a cover-up, and that's what it is. There's a big cover-up on this. And you have to ask yourself, why? Is it just the money grant? I think it goes deeper than that. I think they know something, but they don't want to tell about it or talk about it. They know something, they don't want it out because it would endanger their quest for power. Definitely. But if we have remnants of fallen angel blood in us, in our DNA, that means we are also inherently evil. I'll say that, folks, but that is true. I just said inherently evil, not just moralistically evil. Okay? In other words, we have a tendency to kind of go down on the evil side if we're not careful. Okay? And I think that's another plan of what God had to do in order to keep us straight and to keep us from being absolutely corrupted by this blood that's in us. There's that footprint. That's how big that thing is. It's overlapping the truck.
I'm going to blow it up a little bit.
Leader. Yeah.
Now, somebody explain that to me.
Yeah, that is very strange. Huh? Here's one thing about that, though. I do have to question, where are the toes? You know, is it wearing shoes?
He
I'd have to
said
ask that question.
he had a rough time to get that out of the ground.
Yeah. I'd like to see the underneath it, you know. Okay, we
I
give you a
forgot
little more detail.
how many people it
Well, see
took to
what
get
we're
that out of the
seeing.
ground.
What we're seeing here, Chris, is the top of the cast. If we could see underneath, it would give us more detail. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right,
But anyway, that might be, people would have to say, where's the toes at? And that might be where you would see the toes. You could see underneath it. But anyway,
right.
that is huge. Something that huge doesn't even seem like it could exist. But there have been stories of the mountain trolls for thousands of years. Mountain trolls, by the way, were so mean and vicious. They lived on the mountains, which is why they were called mountain trolls. But they took over a mountain. You didn't go to their mountain. You didn't mess around their mountain. You end up getting eaten. And by the way, that's what that alludes to. The beanstalk, really, they say, is the symbolism for a mountain. And that's what Jack was going up the mountain to face the giant that lived there. But they make it a beanstalk because it's a fairy tale.
That came from either Colorado or Arkansas. The woman lived in the mountains, and she looked out her bay window, and something blocked the sun, and she saw a shadow towering the trees. And she freaked out and called her husband, and her husband thought she was full of nonsense. And these are God-fearing people. These are good, honest people. And her husband didn't believe a lick she was saying, so she screamed bloody murder. So he ended up leaving work.
Mm-hmm.
And he came home, and she pointed to where this thing was.
Mm-hmm.
And he went out there, and he could not believe what he saw, and he called his Bigfoot buddy, which is very known in the cryptid community. He came over, and he was like, "You got to be joking." And there were many tracks, but they could only cast one, and they just disappeared. And I forgot, they were, I think, 52 inches long. And I forgot how many people it took to get this out of the ground, but they just disappeared.
Like, I cast a Bigfoot one time, Bigfoot print, and it was only like 18 inches.
That's still
Imagine
huge.
That. Yeah.
So
yeah, Jack and the Beanstalk. Yep. Very famous fairy tale, Jack and the Beanstalk. They got some interesting properties. Actually, Jack was a thief. He killed that poor giant for no reason. He stole everything that poor giant had, but Jack was a bad guy. But anyway, from the giant's point of view, I guess he was. Anyway, giants have been with us a long time, folks, and they will be with us a lot longer. You know, there's certain DNA things that still show up. Look at all these basketball players. Some of them are very tall. You still got the genes going, but it's not that as much as I'm concerned about is that spirit of the Nephilim. The spirit of the Nephilim still exists in this world. It's driven by the demonic, without a doubt. These are the attributes of the fallen angels. You know, Jesus said about the angels, okay? He said the angels in heaven. Now, he didn't say anywhere else but heaven. The angels in heaven are not given in marriage. Do they marry or are given in marriage? So that was not allowed by God. So these fallen angels went against the good precepts of God. Why was that? Why were the angels being allowed? Because they knew what would happen if they mixed up with the human factor. See, the things would really get screwed up bad.
question says, in Revelation, the beast of the field, which kills a large percentage of the population, could these beasts of the field be giants, Bigfoot, Nephilim, etc.?
Well, like I said earlier, they corrupted nature too, not just mankind. They corrupted nature. We know that without a doubt. And I think that's what you get from that natural corruption of you have maybe things like Bigfoot, Dogman, chupacabras, other things like that don't really belong here on this world. They're not really part of our natural order, like a moose or a mountain lion or anything like that. They belong here. Okay, they're sort of part of the food chain. They're part of the chain of nature. These things, these other things, really don't belong here. So they're really abnormal things of nature. So where you got to ask yourself this important question: when you've got the normal and the abnormal, where does that abnormal come from? Is it mutation? Nah, it just does not look like mutation, folks. Mutations. Here's the interesting thing about mutations. Mutations eventually die out. They don't usually last long until maybe another mutation goes on, but they don't last long. And these things that we're talking about, like Bigfoot and all these things, have been here for thousands of years. They've been talked about by the Native Americans for thousands of years, and so on and so on. These are not mutations in the natural order of things. No. Mutation might be like a duck without webbed feet. That duck will not survive long. That mutation won't last long. These things are lasting long. They're going on hundreds, thousands of years. So what we're looking at are abnormal parts of nature. Where do they come from? What is their origin? It has to be from an outside force, an outside factor that made these things happen. And you got to look at the fallen angel equation, the Nephilim output, the offspring. That's their offspring, the Nephilim. You've got to look at that. That's what you get from that. Okay, genetically speaking, you can have experiments, and I've seen this where they've had experiments with white and black mice, and they'll interbreed and do all these different things and have social orders and all these things. If you bring in an outside factor and put it in there, it screws the whole experiment up. Okay? It screws everything up. It throws everything off kilter. So once you disrupt that order of things, other things happen. You have bad mistakes in the abhorrence of the way these things go. That's the abnormalities. So where are these abnormalities coming from? They had an origin. That's the best origin I can figure out. Now, some people say this could have been caused by aliens. Alien races coming here doing this, messing around with the DNA and all that. That's another possibility. But let's look at the fallen angels. Could they not be also termed as aliens? They don't belong here. They're not things of Earth. You and I, Chris, we're Earth people. We're Earth. We're the things of Earth. When we die, we go back to what? To dust. We go back to the earth. Mm-hmm. That's it. We are things of the earth. We're not aliens to this planet. But the angels are. They don't belong here. Fallen angels especially do not belong here. They are aliens. But that goes back to that old saying, even angels don't need a passport. They can go anywhere they want to. The good angels. But the bad angels are down here with us. They're the real aliens, folks. Okay? To me, that makes perfect sense. They don't belong here, and they've screwed this place up because they're not supposed to be here. They're that unknown factor brought in that has messed everything up. That's where you get sin. That's where you get the fall of man. That's where you get the troubles you got today. That's where the origin began. Began with one angel named Lucifer, who thought he should be God. And he had a plan to defeat God every way possible. And that plan, like I said earlier, is still ongoing today. And all the giants are just one of the offspring of this unholy alliance between men and demons. And that alliance is even stronger today than it has ever been before in the history of mankind. It is stronger today because man is tapping more into the demonic powers in this universe, the dark forces that are there. And they do it scientifically too, like with CERN. We talked about CERN before. And here's another thing, Chris, I'll tell you this, and I've been noticing this a lot. There's some weird, freaky stuff going on, folks. You need to open your eyes out there and become aware of what's going on around you. We're seeing reality shifts going on here. Things are appearing that weren't there before. Things are disappearing that were there. Some kind of a freaky thing is going on because the satanic plan doesn't stop with you and me and DNA and nature, okay? It's ongoing. The satanic forces in this universe are not going to stop with planet Earth. You understand? It's not about just planet Earth. It's the whole ball game. It's the whole universe that they want to be corrupted, to destroy, to take over everything. And that includes even universes and timelines. They would love to screw up the timeline. I don't think, without a doubt, Chris, if it weren't for the grace and the power of Almighty God, we would have been gone a long time ago. We never would have been here. Because this plan is so insidious and so ongoing, it's mind-boggling. You know, I had a professor friend one time. He used to have a saying. He said, "I love to hear the sound of minds getting blown." And I'm blowing your mind tonight because this is not just a little small plan here on this little rock in space. This is much bigger than you could ever comprehend. But it's such an evil, devious plan. And only one force can defeat this plan, and it will be defeated. Because if it didn't stop it, it will not end here. This would just be the beginning of this plan, you understand? It would not stop here. Satan doesn't want just you and me. He wants everything. Everything. And he doesn't care how he gets it. And that's his plan. It wouldn't stop here, but he's gonna be defeated. It is gonna stop here. Okay? It is gonna stop here. You can take that to the bank. But I see that as being a much larger picture than you're really looking at. And you see that happening right now in the world around you. Open your eyes. Open your eyes and see. Get your head out of your phone and pay attention. Pay attention. Because it's ongoing. It's happening right in front of us. And a lot of this stuff has happened since CERN started up, definitely. And I think CERN is being used by these dark forces to open the doorways that need to be opened for the things they want to do.
Absolutely. That's the truth.
I'm hoping we'll get some interesting questions coming up here. Everything got quiet there for one. But it's true, folks. I mean, you can't make stuff up like this. I mean, it is a far-ranging plan, and so insidious. The more I look at it, the more I don't say I admire it. But the more intricate it becomes to me. It's so mind-boggling. It blows your mind.
A lot of people are oblivious to it.
But you know what, Chris? Only the mind of an angel, even a fallen angel, could come up with something like this. You know?
Yeah, that is correct. Y'all have any questions before we wrap up?
How about that? We need some giant questions. Big questions.
Yeah, that Canada thing or that Afghanistan, the government is blocking the sound. I think they've been working, Barb. They've been working on my internet all weekend. I don't know if they hit a line or something, so I have no idea. So I think I'm going off my cell phone right now as a hotspot. Yeah, if you want to lead us in prayer, then we'll wrap up.
All right. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we ask you that in these dark times that are coming upon us, that you give us the knowledge and the wisdom and the discernment to see the things that are going on around us. to confront the evils that are in our lives and our shadows of our world that are going to affect us in our near future and in our daily lives. We ask that you safeguard us, that you keep us close to your heart, and you keep us in your hand, your mighty hand, which can render aid where there seems to be none. We ask this that you give us your holy angels as guardians and protectors over us in our lives, that you bless our fortunes, that you bless our finances, you bless our health and our families, our children, our grandchildren, that you bless us in every way that you possibly can. We ask this in the mighty name of Jesus Christ, the one name to which all power is given in heaven and earth. In his name and by his blood, we ask this and we humbly pray. Amen.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mr. Carroll. So what's on the agenda for next week?
I think next week I'm going back to the spirit of the Antichrist that's connected to AI. So we're going to talk about that a little bit.
I noticed AI is gaining a lot of popularity. I'm seeing more ads. I'm seeing more people lose more jobs, which I said they would.
Yep.
So it is sad, but
it's going to be a big
reality.
It's going to be a big factor in our future, definitely. And we need to talk some more about that.
I'm seeing it already.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why pay Mr. Carroll to do a commercial for $19.95? Y'all can do it for you, and it's just amazing what AI is doing and what it's and people are buying into it.
Oh yeah, and you know,
I see the actors and actresses are on strike about it, and the writers.
Yeah.
Hey, they don't need them.
No.
They're replaceable.
It's not, but you know, AI is going to become self believing in itself to the point where it's going to say, hey, we don't need you either. I don't need you, and you're my biggest threat. So there you go. That's going to be a problem,
ladies and gentlemen. You heard before we wrap up and let everybody go. You heard what they asked AI about the worst scenario, don't you? The human population, the human race. I got to find that clip and play that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they asked the robot that, and then the media freaked out over it. So you heard it next week, ladies and gentlemen. AI, Antichrist. It's coming. Thank you all for tuning in. You all have a good night, and we'll see you next week. Godspeed, ladies and gentlemen. Bye-bye.